Have the heater on last night?
Coldest day of the year, particularly frosty on Bluff Knoll.
Not as chilly as Kalgoorlie.
You're not talking about the weather.
No.
We spent last night discussing the Freemasons, and now we're talking about another great fraternal organisation steeped in tradition and ritual, Diggers and Dealers. Although the traditions and rituals in Cal are a little more basic.
Bourbon on the rocks. That'll do her.
WA's premier mining conference has been in the headlines since it started 30 years ago. The early headlines generally celebrated WA's rich history of mining. In recent years, the three-day conference held every August in Kalgoorlie has been in the headlines because of its other rich history, misogyny and the abuse of alcohol.
It's clearly got a reputational problem.
It started getting frayed around the edges about 10 years ago when people began questioning the lack of women attending the event. The appointment of Elizabeth Gaines as CEO of Fortescue brought this issue to a head. Liz started making the point there were usually more men called Mark or Peter speaking at the event than there were women. And when asked about the skimpy issue, she made the point that she couldn't understand why men enjoyed looking at semi-naked women. The criticism of the blokey culture at Diggers reached fever pitch this year because it was the first time the conference had been held since the sex abuse and uncontrolled drinking in the broader resources sector became mainstream news, the subject of a parliamentary inquiry, and the source of endless vows to clean up the industry and make it safer for women.
Diggers have tried to move with the times.
25 years ago, skimpies were part of the run sheet. That's not the case anymore, so it's got a little bit woke at least. Having said that, in 2017 they refused to have a welcome to country on the grounds the schedule was too tight. That is absolutely no disrespect to the Aboriginal community, is what the organisers said at the time. And there's still a way to go on gender parity. Only 1 in 5 delegates last year was female, but that's up from 1 in 10 in 2019. And Diggers isn't the only West Australian institution falling short on that count. The problem isn't the Diggers and Dealers conference, it's what happens after the conference. The problem is Kalgoorlie. It's in the middle of the desert, it's home to the 24-hour pub, it was home to legalised prostitution, and it is home to skimpy barmaids. It's very much a bloke's town. This is a town where the sex industry is a tourist attraction.
Oh my Lord.
And neither the organisers of the conference nor the mining companies that send representatives to the conference can really tell their staff what they can and can't do if it's legal when they clock off.
Yeah, but they can discourage it.
And they should discourage bad behaviour more than they are at the moment.
Well, could they just move it to Perth?
The organisers say that it needs to stay in Cal because Cal needs it as an event, and they say the Goldfields is the spiritual home of mining, which it is. They make the point it's about the only thing that's keeping the Goldfields Art Centre going. That's all true. But they also know if they move the event, it would probably die because a key attraction of Diggers and Dealers is the ability of a couple of thousand blokes to get on the gas for 3 days without the missus knowing they aren't getting home until 4 a.m. That's the unvarnished truth about Diggers. Drinking is in its DNA. It was started by the owner of the Palace Hotel, a guy called Jeff Stokes, and the inaugural conference was held at the Palace Hotel. In 1992, the Deal of the Year didn't go to someone who took over a bigger rival or got away a company-defining share placement. It went to the owner of the Boulder Block Hotel, who sold his pub to the owners of the Super Pit so they could dig a bigger hole. It's a boys' weekend, and the boys are very protective of that. This is what Kalgoorlie's mayor said about a first-person report by Kalgoorlie miner journalist Amber Lilly, in which she described how a Diggers delegate said her boots gave him a rager and then groped her. This after a sideline event at the WA School of Mines, the incubator for the resources executives of the future. John Bowler said the criticism was unfair, unjustified, and felt like a smear campaign. Now, Bowler's a suspect weather vane for ethical behaviour, given he was sacked as a government minister for leaking cabinet secrets. And while Diggers and Dealers chairman Jim Walker condemned the incident, the Chamber of Minerals and Energy apologised. Bowler went on to complain that the Kalgoorlie miners' office on Hannon Street was shut, which had confused an elderly resident who had been trying to submit a death notice.
Yeah, nice distraction. Okay, so what if it's not Perth? What about the Pilbara?
Put 2,500 people in a Karratha and the place would implode. Cal is the only mining town capable of accommodating and feeding 2,500 delegates.
Plenty of spare rooms in Bullsbrook.
And Premier's flag turning the quarantine facility there into a workers' camp. 500-bed hub called the Centre for National Resilience, I'm not joking, it sounds like a Chinese re-education camp, is still being built. It was meant to house overseas travellers with COVID, and since that's no longer a thing, it's at risk of being a $200 million white elephant. The plan is to lure interstate and international workers to WA with the promise of free accommodation there for 3 months, at which point, given the tight rental market, they can live in the packing boxes they brought with them, out in the cold. I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.